Movie Fanatic.
Hey everyone, welcome to another Movie Fanatic review. Today's review is going to be on the film A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, directed by Marielle Heller. A journalist's life is enriched by friendship when he takes on an assignment profiling Fred Rogers, based on the real-life friendship between journalist Tom Junod and television star Fred Rogers. I gave the film 3 stars, and as always, let's first look at what was good about the film. Number 1. The neighborhood. When the film was transitioning to different scenes, we would see the neighborhood that we typically see at the beginning and the end of a Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood episode. And it was great to see how hard the production designers worked on each of the set pieces of the neighborhood to make them move. And like when the reporter is in the taxi, we see a little toy taxi moving across the neighborhood, and I quite enjoyed seeing this. Number 2, the set. The set brought me back to my childhood. The house, the kingdom of make-believe, it was amazing to see it put together again. And as I said earlier, it brought me back to my childhood, and the opening theme song helps do that as well. Number 3, the storyline. I liked how the storyline flowed. It was as if we were watching a long episode of Mr. Rogers. It starts with Mr. Rogers coming in, then it transitions to another thing, back again with Mr. Rogers and Mr. McFreely, which, by the way, they did a picture-in-picture of how magazines are made, and it was awesome to see. And then it transitions to another scene, and we end with Mr. Rogers in the same red sweater, wishing us a good day. It was as if we watched an hour and however many minute TV episode, and I enjoyed seeing how this was the way the film was portrayed. Now that we have the good stuff out of the way, let's move on to what the film needed to work better on, or in fact change. Number 1, not enough Mr. Rogers. The film was mostly focused on the reporter who did a story on Mr. Rogers, as I said earlier in the synopsis, but I would have personally liked to see more of Mr. Rogers. Before going into the film, I thought the film was going to be like the documentary about Mr. Rogers that came out a while ago, and I thought it would just solely focus on Mr. Rogers, but that isn't the case. It's more focused on the reporter and his life, and I think I would have enjoyed the film more if there was less of the reporter. Number 2, Tom Hanks. I'm not saying I do not like Tom Hanks. In fact, I absolutely love Tom Hanks. He is one of my all-time favorite actors. I own 14 of his films. He's amazing. But what I mean by Tom Hanks is I considered him to be more of a supporting role than a lead role with how little we see of him in the film. Now, you may go to the film and think he's on screen a lot. Well, he is on there quite a bit, but the reporter is mostly the one on the screen because the story mainly focuses on him telling the story about Mr. Rogers. And I think the film would have been better if Tom Hanks was on screen more and if the film was just about Mr. Rogers and not the reporter. Number 3, the pacing. The pacing was incredibly slow for the film. I understand Mr. Rogers talked slower, and that's what they were trying to portray, but it just kept going, and it seemed like the film was never going to end, and you can bring up the pacing while still having Mr. Rogers talk how he talks, but I don't want to fall asleep in a theater while watching a film about one of my favorite childhood TV shows as a kid. Ugh! Special announcement, if you like bonus content for films, there is a little extra ending during the credits. You'll see the production people working on the neighborhood village during a song that is sung by Mr. Rogers, and you will eventually see Mr. Rogers himself, which is very nice. So if you want a happy ending? There it is. Now that we have all that stuff out of the way, here are some fun facts about Mr. Rogers. Number 1, he had a strict routine. He started his day at 5 a.m. and made time for prayer, as well as some studying, writing, phone calls, swimming, and responding to fan mail. Number 2, he responded to every fan letter he received. He approximately received anywhere between 50 to 100 letters a day, and he took the time to respond to each and every single one of them because he respected the kids who wrote. Number 3, no feeling was too big or too small for Mr. Rogers to talk about. Throughout the years, Mr. Rogers would talk about a variety of topics, such as why kids shouldn't be afraid of getting haircuts, to divorce, to war, and he even talked about the assassination of JFK in one of his episodes as well. Number 4, the yellow spotlight in the opening sequence of the show was to remind children and parents to slow down a little. Number 5, kids who watched Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood retained more than those who watched Sesame Street, and that was done by Yale University. Number 6, Mr. Rogers was colorblind. Number 7, he made a guest appearance on Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. Number 8, many of Mr. Rogers' characters were named after people in his life. Mr. McFreely was his grandfather's name, and Queen Sarah was named for his wife. Number 9, he was never a sniper, nor did he have a sleeve of tattoos on his arm. There have been rumors throughout the internet that he was a sniper in Vietnam and had a sleeve of tattoos on his arm representing each person he killed. This is not at all correct, but hey, if it's on the internet, it must be true, and that's a quote from Abraham Lincoln, and I know that because it was on the internet. And finally, number 10. One of his sweaters was donated to the Smithsonian Museum. And that is going to be my review on A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Let me know what you thought about the film in the comments below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you can keep in the loop of when new videos are upcoming on the channel. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.